It was July 6, 2025, in Indian River County, Florida. 87-year-old Frank J. Quinn, a quiet man from Vermont who had spent his life avoiding risk. He was calm, respectful, the kind of person you'd never expect to be at the center of something tragic. Yet on this day, he made a decision that would change everything. As Frank drove along the southbound lanes, he noticed something small but significant: a turtle inching its way across the highway. Most drivers would have looked past it, assuming nature would take its course. But Frank wasn't like most drivers. He cared. He couldn't stand the thought of a fragile creature being crushed beneath speeding tires. So without hesitation, he pulled onto the shoulder, stepped out of his car, and moved toward the chaos of rushing vehicles. Picture it. Cars flying by at over 70 miles per hour, the air thick with heat and danger. Yet Frank's focus was only on that turtle. He looked for a gap, for a moment of safety, and then began walking across the highway. To him, it was an act of kindness. To everyone else, it was a moment holding its breath, balanced on the edge of disaster. And then it happened. A woman in a 2020 Mazda CX-9 noticed Frank ahead. She slowed her car, trying to avoid hitting him. But behind her, barreling forward at high speed, was a 2020 Dodge 3500 pickup. Its driver, a 53-year-old man from Port St. Lucie, didn't react in time. The truck smashed into the back of the Mazda, the crash so violent it sent the SUV spinning off the road and into a fence. Metal twisted, glass shattered, but somehow the woman inside climbed out, shaken but unharmed. Frank wasn't so lucky. The pickup, still surging from the collision, kept moving forward. In the next instant, it struck him. The impact was brutal, hurling his body across the lanes until he landed on the far side of the highway. Everything he had risked, everything he had hoped to save, ended in that single second. Emergency responders arrived quickly, sirens cutting through the thick summer air, but there was nothing they could do. Frank was gone. His family, traveling nearby, had to face the unthinkable, watching the life of someone they loved so dearly end in front of them, all because he had chosen compassion over caution. Hours passed before the southbound lanes reopened. Drivers complained about the traffic jam, about being stuck in the heat, but those who had seen what happened weren't thinking about the inconvenience. They couldn't shake the image of an elderly man who gave his last act of kindness to a turtle on the highway. And the strangest part, no one even knows what happened to the turtle. Did it survive? Did it slip away unnoticed into the grass? Or was it lost in the chaos, the silent cause of a tragedy that left one life forever gone? May 1st, 2025, Yellowstone, Idaho. The sun was setting over the mountains, washing Highway 20 in a golden glow. That stretch of road, just 16 miles west of Yellowstone National Park, was alive with spring tourists, eager to catch one final glimpse of nature's beauty before nightfall pulled its curtain. In the eastbound lane, a white Mercedes tour van rolled forward, carrying 14 passengers. They were families, friends, travelers from China and Italy, excited and exhausted after a day of wonder inside the park. Their driver, a 46-year-old man from California, kept his hand steady on the wheel. That two-lane road was familiar to him, and he treated it with respect. In the opposite lane, a black Dodge Ram approached. Behind the wheel was 25-year-old Isaiah Moreno from Humble, Texas. People who saw him that evening would later describe the same thing: a truck swerving in and out of its lane, too fast for the curves, too reckless for a road so narrow. What they didn't know then, but investigators would later confirm, was that Moreno was carrying more than just a pickup down that highway. He was carrying a poison in his bloodstream. His blood alcohol level was 0.20%, more than double the legal limit. At 7:15 p.m., everything changed. The Dodge Ram drifted across the center line, directly into the path of the tour van. The collision was violent, unforgiving, the kind of crash that leaves no room for second chances. Metal folded in on itself like paper. Both fuel tanks ruptured, and within seconds the highway wasn't a road anymore. It was a furnace. Flames consumed everything, rising higher than the trees, turning that quiet gateway to Yellowstone into a wall of fire. Screams echoed. Some passengers clawed their way out of the wreckage, coughing, staggering, their clothes scorched. But 6 never had the chance. 5 tourists and the van's driver were trapped inside as the fire devoured the vehicle. In the Dodge Ram, Moreno never made it out. 7 lives, gone before rescuers even arrived. Emergency crews from Fremont County rushed to the scene, their sirens cutting through the smoke-filled air. But even they were powerless at first. The blaze was too intense. They had to fight the fire just to get close enough to drag the injured away. 16 people were left broken and bloodied, 3 clinging to life as helicopters carried them to trauma centers. As the fire smoldered and investigators walked among the twisted wreckage, the truth came into sharp focus. This wasn't fate. This wasn't chance. One trooper said it best. This wasn't an accident. It was a choice. A choice made by a drunk driver who turned a tourist's dream vacation into a nightmare that will haunt families forever. News of the crash spread fast, carried across headlines and broadcast screens worldwide. It wasn't just the numbers, the 7 dead, the 16 injured, that cut so deep. It was the location. One of America's most iconic places, a symbol of untouched beauty, had become the stage for unspeakable loss. The Chinese and Italian consulates issued public condolences. Tour operators rewrote their itineraries, some banning nighttime driving altogether. Idaho officials spoke about checkpoints, lighting, and wider shoulders. But to the families, policy changes didn't matter. Nothing could rewind the moment fire swallowed the road. By the week's end, Highway 20 was no longer just a passage to Yellowstone. It had become a memorial. Flowers lined the asphalt. Photographs fluttered in the wind. A note left by a grieving hand read only 8 words. "We came to see beauty. We found tragedy. And that is the unbearable truth." In a place where travelers searched for wonder, a single drunk driver left behind ashes. Beauty was replaced with horror. Laughter was replaced with silence. And for those left behind, the road to Yellowstone will forever carry the weight of that night. A reminder that when alcohol meets the open road, no one is safe. Pelle Lindberg was more than just a hockey player. He was a rising star and a trailblazer from Sweden who had made a significant mark in the NHL as the Philadelphia Flyers goaltender. By 1985, at only 26 years old, Pelle had already reached the pinnacle of his career, winning the Vezina Trophy as the league's best goalie, a remarkable achievement for any player, and especially for one so young and far from home. His style was confident and dynamic, earning him respect from teammates, opponents, and fans alike. The hockey world saw him as a promising talent with a bright future ahead. Yet behind the glitz of professional sports and accolades, Pelle's life was not without its struggles. On the night of November 9th, 1985, after a Flyers team party, Pelle left with 2 friends, driving his powerful Porsche 930 Turbo through the quiet streets of Summerdale, New Jersey. Tragically, Pelle had consumed alcohol that evening, and his blood alcohol level was later measured at .24, well above the legal limit. Around 5:41 a.m. on November 10th, Pelle lost control of his car as he was driving on the wet road, causing the vehicle to spin and strike a guardrail before crashing head-on into a wall near an elementary school. The impact was devastating. Pelle suffered severe head injuries and was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Despite the medical team's best efforts, Pelle was declared brain dead within hours. His family made the heartbreaking decision to take him off life support the following day, November 11th, 1985. The news of Pelle Lindberg's death sent shockwaves through the NHL and beyond. Here was a young man at the height of his career taken far too soon, leaving teammates, friends, and fans devastated. Lindberg was the first European-born goalie to win the Vezina Trophy, and he had become a symbol of international talent breaking through in a North American sport. His loss was not just personal for those who knew him, it was a profound loss for the hockey community and the sport itself. Pelle's death also brought difficult conversations about the dangers of drinking and driving, especially among athletes who face high-pressure lives and intense schedules. The tragedy underscored the risks and consequences of impaired driving, a message that resonates strongly to this day. The 2 passengers in the car survived, but sustained serious injuries, and their accounts added further weight to the tragedy. In the aftermath of the crash, the Flyers and the entire hockey world grappled with the loss of a player who was admired not only for his talent, but also for his warmth and character off the ice. In response to this tragic event, the Philadelphia Flyers honored Pelle Lindberg's memory in several ways. His number 31 was retired, ensuring that no other Flyer would wear that number again. The team also established the Pelle Lindberg Memorial Trophy, awarded annually to the most improved player, keeping his legacy alive within the organization. For fans and teammates alike, Pelle's spirit remains a poignant reminder of both incredible talent and the fragility of life. The story of Pelle Lindberg is not just about a talented goalie or a tragic accident. It is about the intersection of promise and vulnerability, the highs of athletic achievement shadowed by the realities of human frailty. It reminds us that behind every helmet and jersey is a person with hopes, struggles, and sometimes devastating mistakes. Though Pelle's career and life were cut short, his impact endures. His pioneering presence as a European star in the NHL opened doors for many who followed, and his memory continues to inspire players and fans. The hockey world still remembers Pelle Lindberg not just for the saves he made or the games he won, but for the life that was tragically lost too soon and the lessons left behind. It was the 4th of July in Summerville, South Carolina. Fireworks cracked across the sky, music poured from speakers on porches, and families filled the streets with laughter and celebration. Independence Day had always been a night of joy and tradition, but for 41-year-old Alan Ray McGrew, this would be the last holiday he ever celebrated. Alan wasn't just another neighbor at the party, he was the spirit of it. Dressed in a full Uncle Sam costume, top hat, red, white, and blue suit, and a fake beard, he moved through the crowd like he owned the night. Everyone knew Alan loved the 4th of July more than anyone else, and this year was no different. He cracked jokes, danced, and pulled stunts to make people laugh. To friends and neighbors, he was the life of the celebration, the man who could make a simple block party feel like a show. As the evening wore on, Alan reached for something few in the neighborhood would dare touch, a mortar-style firework, the kind designed for professional displays. While most people stuck to sparklers or small rockets, Alan wanted a moment that everyone would remember. At first, he held the firework above his hat, posing, teasing, making it seem like just another gag. His wife Paige watched from only a few feet away, smiling, assuming he hadn't lit it yet. To her, he was just putting on a show, but he had already lit the fuse. In seconds, the firework exploded on top of his head. The blast was deafening, the crowd stunned into silence before screams broke out. Alan collapsed instantly, and though neighbors rushed to help, there was no saving him. By 11:10 p.m., he was gone. Just moments earlier, he had been dancing, laughing, and basking in the joy of a night he loved more than any other. The tragedy cut especially deep for his son, Hunter, who had only recently shared with his father the excitement of his engagement. Alan had been thrilled at the idea of welcoming a daughter-in-law into the family. Now, Hunter stood frozen in shock, forced to watch his father's final, unthinkable moments unfold before his eyes. The celebration that was supposed to bring joy now carried a memory he would never be able to escape. As news of the accident spread, the public was quick to weigh in. Many called Alan reckless, careless, even foolish. Some assumed he was heavily intoxicated. Paige pushed back against the harsh judgment. Yes, Alan had been drinking that night, but only lightly. He wasn't a reckless man, she insisted. He was simply happy, caught up in the excitement of his favorite holiday, surrounded by family and friends. To her, he wasn't defined by that one decision. He was a man who had spent his life helping others, mowing neighbors' lawns, fixing broken fences, and giving more than he ever asked for in return. A video shared online captured him dancing in his costume not long before the blast, smiling and carefree. Watching it now feels haunting. He had no idea the danger waiting seconds away. No one could have imagined how quickly laughter could collapse into horror. August 4th, 2024, Castle Rock, Colorado. For the Anderson family, it had been a perfect day at the Douglas County Fair. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew "Matt" Anderson, just 39 years old, a proud Air Force veteran and father of 4, pulled into a 7-Eleven gas station to fuel up before driving home. His kids were still buzzing from the fair, chattering in the back seat, completely unaware of the nightmare seconds away. At that same moment, Paul Wayne Stevenson, 57 years old, was tearing down the road in his Chevy Silverado. Hours earlier, he had drowned himself in Fireball whiskey and beer. His blood alcohol level later revealed to be nearly 2.5 times the legal limit. Witnesses say he never even touched the brakes. The Silverado came screaming across the parking lot as it barreled at nearly 50 miles per hour straight toward Matt's SUV. The impact was bone-shattering, the kind of sound that makes bystanders freeze. Matt was trapped, crushed inside. His 4 children were thrown into chaos, but somehow alive, miraculously alive. First responders fought desperately to save him, but the man who had survived deployments, who had coached his kids' soccer teams, who had mentored countless young airmen, didn't survive the parking lot of a 7-Eleven. He was gone in an instant. A decorated officer, a father, a neighbor everyone admired, ripped away because one man chose a bottle over a brake pedal. Castle Rock was shaken to its core. This wasn't just another name in the headlines. This was Matt Anderson. People who knew him couldn't fathom it. People who didn't knew instantly what kind of man he must have been by the way the town grieved him. His death wasn't just tragic, it felt like a robbery, and then came the detail that made it all even worse. Stevenson had done this before, a prior DUI conviction. He already knew the danger, he already knew the cost, and still he climbed back behind the wheel, drunk. This time, prosecutors weren't going to treat it like an accident. George Brockler, the same man who had once prosecuted the Aurora theater shooter, made it clear. Stevenson's choices were no different than firing a loaded weapon into a crowd. The jury saw the footage. They heard Matt's widow choke back tears as she explained how she had to tell 4 children their father wasn't coming home. The courtroom fell silent as the horror replayed frame by frame in everyone's minds. In April 2025, the verdict came. Guilty, not of manslaughter, not of a lesser charge, but guilty in the harshest possible sense. By June, the judge handed down the kind of sentence rarely seen in DUI cases: life in prison without parole, plus 92 years. Outside the courthouse, Matt's oldest son stood tall, clutching the folded American flag that once draped his father's casket. Cameras clicked, reporters leaned in, and with a voice far older than his years, he said, "My dad always said we should do what's right. Today the court did that for him. Drunk driving isn't a mistake. It isn't an accident. It's a loaded weapon and it kills." Dale Earnhardt Sr. was more than just a NASCAR driver. He was a living legend. Known as the Intimidator, his fearless driving style and relentless competitiveness made him one of the most iconic figures in motorsports history. On February 18, 2001, during the final lap of the Daytona 500, tragedy struck that not only shocked the racing world but forever changed the future of NASCAR safety. As the race reached its climax, Earnhardt was running third, tucked tightly behind the leaders. The speed was blistering, cars pushing beyond 180 miles per hour as they battled for victory. In those final moments, Earnhardt's car made contact with Sterling Marlin's vehicle, which unsettled his steering. Simultaneously, Michael Waltrip and Ken Schrader were in the thick of the pack just ahead. Earnhardt's car then veered sharply to the right and slammed headfirst into the outside wall in turn 4. The impact was violent and immediate, leaving Earnhardt motionless behind the wheel. Emergency crews responded swiftly, but despite their best efforts, Dale Earnhardt was pronounced dead from a basilar skull fracture, a fatal injury to the base of the skull caused by the violent motion of the crash. At 49 years old, the loss of a driver so beloved by fans and peers alike was a devastating blow to the sport. The moment was broadcast live, and millions watched in stunned silence as news of his death spread. Earnhardt's passing marked the first death of a driver in a NASCAR Cup Series race in over a decade, and reminded everyone just how perilous high-speed racing can be. In the wake of Earnhardt's tragic death, NASCAR faced a reckoning about driver safety. The sport immediately launched investigations into the crash and safety measures in place at the time. One of the most glaring issues was the absence of widespread use of the head and neck support device, which was designed to prevent fatal head and neck injuries during crashes. Earnhardt was among many drivers who had not adopted this safety technology, which today is mandatory in nearly every major racing series around the world. NASCAR also accelerated the development and installation of safer barriers, specialized walls that absorb and reduce the force of impacts when cars collide with the track boundaries. Prior to this, many tracks had unforgiving concrete walls that offered little protection. In addition, the cars themselves underwent significant redesigns, including better seat harnesses and improved roll cages to increase driver protection. NASCAR also improved medical response protocols and emergency training for track personnel to ensure faster and more effective treatment in the event of crashes. The culture around safety shifted dramatically, with drivers, teams, and officials embracing these changes not just as necessary precautions, but as vital elements of the sport's future. These reforms were instrumental in preventing fatal crashes and have been credited with saving many lives in the years since. Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s death became a turning point in NASCAR history, sparking a legacy that extends far beyond his racing achievements. His loss was deeply felt by fans, fellow drivers, and the entire motorsport community, but it also ignited a commitment to prioritize driver safety like never before. Since the implementation of these safety measures, NASCAR has remarkably gone without a driver fatality in its top 3 national series, a testament to the effectiveness of the reforms that followed. Earnhardt's legacy now lives on not only in the records he set and the unforgettable moments he created on the track, but in every driver whose life has been protected because of the lessons learned from his tragic crash. The 2001 Daytona 500 was more than just a race. It was a pivotal moment where the sport came face to face with its vulnerabilities and chose to evolve. Honoring Dale Earnhardt means remembering the cost of pushing the limits and recognizing the progress made to keep those limits from becoming deadly. His story serves as a sober reminder of the risks drivers face and the continuous need for innovation in safety. In the end, Dale Earnhardt's legacy is one of both greatness and hope, a reminder that even in tragedy, there can be a powerful drive toward a safer, better future in racing. It was Christmas Day, 2007 in San Francisco. Families had come and gone from the San Francisco Zoo, children bundled in coats, parents tired but smiling. By 5 p.m., the gates were closing, and the animals were supposed to be settling into the calm of the night. But for 3 young men, the evening would take a turn no one could have imagined. 17-year-old Carlos Eduardo Sousa Jr. had come with his friends, 19-year-old Amritpal Dhaliwal and 23-year-old Kulbir Dhaliwal. They had walked the paths, laughed, and stopped by the Siberian tiger enclosure, home to Tatiana, a 350-pound predator who had never been considered a danger. Visitors leaned against the railing that day, pointing and whispering, some claiming the boys were shouting, waving, maybe even tossing things into the habitat. Nobody knew for certain. What everyone agreed on was that something agitated the tiger. And then, the impossible happened. Tatiana escaped. The enclosure had been considered secure. A deep moat, a nearly 12-foot wall, and years of trust that it was unbreakable. Yet somehow she got out. Some said she leapt. Others thought she climbed. Maybe the taunting triggered something primal, or maybe it was just bad luck. Whatever the cause, Tatiana broke free, and the moment she did, the night turned into chaos. Carlos was her first target. The attack was merciless, leaving him with catastrophic injuries to his head, neck, and chest. His jugular vein torn, his spine shattered. He never stood a chance. He collapsed near the enclosure, the Christmas lights in the distance flickering over a scene too brutal to comprehend. His friends ran, sprinting nearly 3 football fields to the zoo cafe, blood on their clothes, panic in their voices. They begged for help, shouted for towels, for an ambulance, for someone to save Paul, who was badly wounded. But instead of aid, the cafe doors were locked. Staff thought it was a prank, some kind of cruel joke on a holiday evening. Even when 911 calls came through at 5:08 p.m., zoo employees hesitated. The idea that a tiger had actually escaped seemed too far-fetched. Those precious minutes ticked by, the brothers desperate, Carlos already gone. When police finally arrived, they were held at the gate. 16 long minutes passed while security debated whether to let them inside. What if the tiger reached the city? The officers waited. While inside the zoo, Tatiana prowled. By the time they entered, they found her close to the brothers. She turned toward them, muscles coiled, eyes fixed. A single shot to her forehead brought her down. But the chaos didn't end there. Officers, unsure if other tigers had escaped, swept the zoo with rifles and night vision gear, moving carefully through the darkness. 18 minutes later, they confirmed the unthinkable had been real. Tatiana was the only one free, and she was dead. In the aftermath, grief settled in. Carlos's family mourned quietly, broken by a loss too sudden to process. His mother only wanted answers. She didn't speak of lawsuits, only of understanding how a boy could go to the zoo on Christmas Day and never come home. The Dhaliwal brothers lived on, but not without scars. Paul carried his wounds on his body. Kulbir carried his inside. Both would later take legal action, blaming the zoo's enclosure for being too low, too vulnerable. May 19, 2024, Pune, India. Just after 2:30 a.m., the Kalyani Nagar intersection was quieter than usual. Riding side by side on a scooter were 2 young IT engineers, both just 24, Anish Awadia and Ashwini Koshta. They were heading home after a long day, unaware that in seconds their lives would be violently stolen. The silence of the night was suddenly broken by a sound no one could mistake, the deafening roar of a Porsche Taycan, a $150,000 electric supercar ripping through the streets with no license plates. Witnesses later said it was flying at nearly 125 miles per hour, triple the speed limit. Behind the wheel was 17-year-old Vedant Agarwal, the son of one of Pune's most powerful real estate developers. Earlier that night, he had been drinking heavily at 2 upscale bars, and he wasn't alone. 2 friends sat beside him in the Porsche, laughing, recording videos, capturing their luxury-fueled chaos for social media. Hours earlier, they were posting champagne glasses and designer shots. Minutes later, they would be responsible for a scene of devastation. As Anish and Ashwini entered the intersection, the Porsche came hurtling toward them like a missile. The impact was instant, brutal. The scooter was obliterated, its riders flung nearly 20 feet across the asphalt. The force left no chance of survival. In seconds, 2 bright young lives, full of dreams and futures, were extinguished. But what followed in the hours after the crash is what ignited a nationwide fury. At the hospital, police moved quickly to draw Vedant's blood to confirm intoxication. That's when investigators say a cover-up began. Allegedly, his parents, working with hospital staff, tried to swap his blood sample with someone else's, erasing the evidence of alcohol. The deception didn't hold. At a second hospital, the truth came out, and suddenly the story was no longer just about a crash. It was about power, privilege, and corruption. Images and videos of the aftermath flooded social media. The mangled scooter lying in pieces, the Porsche looking eerily untouched, police officers shielding the teenager from cameras. And then came the decision that stunned the nation. The Juvenile Justice Board ruled that Vedant would be tried as a minor. Months away from turning 18, he faced, at most, 3 years in a juvenile facility. Not prison, not decades behind bars. 3 years. The anger boiled over. His father was arrested for orchestrating the blood swap. His mother, too, was later detained for her role, though released on bail after 10 months. The bars that served him alcohol came under investigation, accused of fueling the reckless night. Across India, the case reignited an old wound, the feeling that the wealthy always manage to escape real punishment, while ordinary families are left to bury their loved ones. For Anish and Ashwini's families, this wasn't about politics or legal loopholes. It was about 2 children they would never see again. 2 young professionals who had worked hard, carved out their place in a competitive industry, and had it all ripped away because a privileged teenager wanted to feel untouchable in a 200-month machine. In a country where 178,000 people died in road crashes just last year, this case became more than a headline. It became a mirror, forcing millions to ask whether justice in India was something you could buy, and whether a last name mattered more than the lives of 2 innocent people. Even now, investigators continue to sift through CCTV footage, witness statements, and digital evidence pulled from Vedant's phone. But the truth feels painfully clear. Anish and Ashwini didn't die because of fate. They didn't die because of chance. They died because speed, alcohol, and privilege collided in the worst possible way. And for millions watching, the question still echoes. Will justice ever be served when the driver's last name carries more weight than the blood he spilled on the street? Ayrton Senna was more than just a Formula One driver. He was a legend whose name still echoes in the racing world decades after his untimely death. Known for his extraordinary talent, relentless determination, and passion for speed, Senna was widely regarded as one of the greatest racing drivers in history. Born in Brazil, he rose quickly through the ranks of motorsport, capturing the imagination of fans around the world with his exceptional skill and fearless driving style. He won 3 Formula One World Championships and was revered not only for his speed, but also for his focus, precision, and ability to perform under immense pressure. The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix was meant to be another milestone in his remarkable career, but turned into a heartbreaking tragedy that shocked the entire world. The weekend was already overshadowed by the death of Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger in qualifying, a grim reminder of the sport's inherent dangers. Despite the somber mood, the race went ahead with Senna determined to push for victory. As he drove his Williams FW16 around the Imola circuit, Senna was focused on the task ahead, unaware that this race would be his last. On the 7th lap of the race, disaster struck at the high-speed Tamburello corner, one of the most challenging sections of the Imola circuit. Senna's car suddenly left the racing line and crashed into the concrete wall at a speed estimated around 135 miles per hour. The impact was severe and instantly raised alarms across the paddock. The crash caused a piece of the suspension to break off and strike Senna's helmet, resulting in fatal head injuries. Medical teams responded quickly and Senna was rushed to a nearby hospital, but despite the best efforts, he was pronounced dead a few hours later. The news sent shockwaves throughout the motorsport community and beyond. Ayrton Senna was not just a racing champion. He was a national hero in Brazil and an inspiration to millions around the globe. His death marked one of the darkest days in Formula One history and forced the sport to confront its safety shortcomings in a very urgent way. The tragedy highlighted how dangerous racing could be even for the most skilled and experienced drivers and sparked a series of changes that transformed Formula One forever. In the years following Senna's death, Formula One implemented major safety reforms aimed at preventing such tragedies from happening again. Circuits were redesigned to include more runoff areas and safer barriers, and car designs were improved to provide better protection to drivers during crashes. New regulations were introduced to enhance the structural integrity of racing cars and improve driver safety equipment. Beyond the technical changes, Senna's passing inspired a cultural shift within the sport, emphasizing the importance of safety alongside competition. His legacy extends beyond his remarkable achievements on the track. He was also known for his humanitarian work and his efforts to help underprivileged children in Brazil. Ayrton Senna's life and death left an indelible mark on Formula One and motorsport as a whole. While his death was a heartbreaking loss, it became a catalyst for progress that has saved many lives since. Senna remains an enduring symbol of excellence, passion, and courage, a reminder of both the risks and rewards of pushing the limits in the pursuit of greatness. It was the evening of July 4th, 2025 in Houston, Texas. Fireworks echoed in the distance, lighting up the night sky above the quiet, ivy-lined streets of River Oaks, one of the city's wealthiest neighborhoods. Behind the tall hedges of a grand home on Avalon Place, 67-year-old Deborah Putzkatucci and her fiancé, 68-year-old Kevin Willis, were making final preparations for their annual Independence Day party. The couple was well known in their circle, sophisticated, warm, always eager to share fine wine and good food. For Deborah and Kevin, wine wasn't just a drink, it was a passion, a piece of their story. They had traveled the world together, France, Italy, Texas Hill Country, chasing flavors and memories. Over time, Deborah had built an impressive collection of rare Bordeaux and vintages stored in the cool, dim light of her private wine cellar. That night, as fireworks cracked overhead, the couple slipped downstairs to that cellar, a ritual that had always brought them joy. They were surrounded by bottles worth thousands, the kind of collection that takes decades to build. But they had brought something with them that night they didn't fully understand. Dry ice. Maybe it was to cool the bottles, maybe to control the humidity. Whatever the reason, it seemed harmless. After all, people use dry ice every day to keep things cold. But dry ice doesn't just melt, it transforms. It becomes carbon dioxide gas, invisible and odorless, heavier than air, and in a space as closed off as a wine cellar, that gas has only one place to go, down, pushing the oxygen out, stealing the air without a sound. Neighbors later said they noticed something strange. The house was unusually quiet. By 7 p.m., no one had heard from the couple. The laughter, the music, the chatter that usually marked Deborah and Kevin's gatherings, silence. When first responders arrived, they immediately sensed danger. A chemical heaviness in the air clung to the walls. Firefighters put on protective gear before stepping inside. Down in the cellar, they found the couple. Deborah and Kevin had collapsed side by side among the bottles they had spent years collecting. Both had been overcome by the gas before they even realized what was happening. By the time rescuers reached them, it was already too late. Lieutenant Larry Croson of the Houston Police would later explain how it happened. Dry ice, he said, can kill quietly. In a sealed room with poor ventilation, the carbon dioxide builds rapidly, undetectable until it overwhelms you. There is no smell, no taste. You don't even realize you're suffocating until your body starts to shut down. It takes minutes, just minutes, for the air to disappear. The news spread quickly through Houston's wine and food circles. Deborah, a respected lawyer and accountant, had been deeply involved in sharing her love for wine with friends. Kevin was remembered as kind, generous, the kind of man who made people feel welcome at every table. Just days before, he had spoken to a friend about plans for the following week, plans that would never happen. Their deaths left friends stunned. How could something so ordinary, so simple, become deadly? The house itself, bought by Deborah years earlier and cherished ever since, stood as a symbol of her success and resilience. Yet on that night, it became the place of her final moments. Authorities confirmed what seemed unthinkable. No foul play, no crime, just an accident. An accident caused by something many of us handle casually, never realizing the risk it carries. August 11th, 2025, Bronx, New York. Just before 1 a.m. on the Bronx River Parkway, southbound traffic moved steadily. Workers heading home, late-night diners easing back to their neighborhoods. But one driver was not heading home quietly. He was about to turn the parkway into a nightmare. Behind the wheel of a Mercedes was 21-year-old Mauricio Narayu of White Plains. Witnesses would later say he was weaving through traffic at dangerous speeds, his headlights darting between lanes like a predator closing in. And then, chaos. Mauricio swerved into the middle lane, slamming into a Volkswagen GTI. The Volkswagen careened into the guardrail, sparks flying as metal screamed against metal. But the destruction didn't stop there. The Mercedes veered again, lunging into the right lane. In its path were two mopeds side by side. On them rode Enrique Martinez, just 21, and his friend Manuel Amarante Panalo, only 19. They never had a chance to react. In one brutal second, the Mercedes tore through them. The sound was deafening. Witnesses later described it as an explosion, followed by the shrill scrape of twisting steel and shattering glass. The mopeds were demolished. Both young men were thrown to the asphalt, their bodies helpless against the violence of impact. Drivers slammed on brakes, jumped from their cars, dialed 911 with shaking hands. But the damage was already done. Paramedics raced to the scene under the glare of emergency lights. Enrique was found unresponsive. He was rushed to Jacobi Medical Center, but doctors could only declare what everyone feared. He was gone. Manuel, clinging to life, was transported to Montefiore Hospital. Within the hour, he too was pronounced dead. 2 lives erased in the span of a heartbeat. And still, the tragedy deepened. Police said the Mercedes driver Mauricio showed clear signs of intoxication. He failed the field sobriety test and was immediately taken into custody. Prosecutors later hit him with charges of vehicular manslaughter, driving while intoxicated, and operating while impaired. What began as a single reckless driver became a chain reaction disaster. 7 vehicles involved, their frames twisted and scattered across the pavement. The parkway turned into a graveyard of crumpled steel and broken glass. Floodlights illuminating the investigators as they traced skid marks and photographed what was left behind. By the next morning, the Bronx was in mourning. Friends and family of Enrique and Manuel gathered at the crash site, placing flowers, candles, and handwritten notes on the guardrail. Grief poured out in words and tears. Enrique's cousin said he was like a big brother to everyone. Manuel's childhood friend remembered him as the kind of person who would hand you his last dollar without hesitation. Both young men had been working toward better futures. Both futures were stolen. For residents near the parkway, this wasn't shocking. It was infuriating. One man who lived nearby told reporters, "People speed here all the time. They weave in and out like it's a racetrack." He had seen it before, but this time it cost 2 families everything. Now, funerals are being planned instead of milestones celebrated. 2 mothers will bury their sons, while a 21-year-old driver sits in a cell awaiting his fate. The investigation continues, but the truth is already undeniable. 2 young men are dead, not because of bad luck, not because of fate, but because someone thought they could drink, drive, and outrun the consequences. Diogo Jota's sudden death in July 2025 sent shockwaves through the football world and beyond. Known for his incredible speed, skill, and knack for scoring crucial goals, Jota was not just a Liverpool star, but also a beloved figure in Portuguese football. The tragedy unfolded on the A52 motorway in Spain, where Jota was driving a Lamborghini Huracan with his younger brother, Andre Silva. They were returning to England after a brief trip following Jota's recent lung surgery, which had prevented him from flying. Tragically, their journey ended abruptly when a tire on the Lamborghini suddenly blew out while overtaking another vehicle. The car lost control, crashed into the roadside embankment, and burst into flames. Both brothers died instantly at the scene. Investigations later revealed that Jota was driving above the speed limit at the time, a factor that likely contributed to the severity of the crash. Despite his young age of 28, Diogo's life and career were cut short in a heartbreaking accident that underscored the dangers of high-speed driving, especially on unfamiliar roads. The loss was felt deeply by Liverpool FC, his teammates, fans worldwide, and the broader football community. Tributes poured in from every corner. Players, managers, and fans alike mourned the passing of a player whose talent had already made a lasting impact. Beyond the headlines and shock, the accident highlighted the fragile nature of life and how quickly it can change. Jota had been in the prime of his career, recently celebrating milestones with Liverpool and the Portuguese national team. His younger brother Andre, aged 25, was also a rising footballer with a promising future. Their deaths served as a painful reminder of how even the brightest stars can be suddenly extinguished. Liverpool honored Jota by retiring his number 20 shirt, and his boyhood club in Gondomar paid tribute with a special kit to remember both brothers. The tragedy brought the football world together in grief, but also in celebration of the joy and passion Jota brought to the game. While his career was tragically brief, his legacy as a gifted player and beloved teammate will not be forgotten. The story of Diogo Jota is a solemn reflection on talent, loss, and the unpredictable turns life can take. A reminder to cherish every moment on and off the pitch. It was a warm Monday afternoon in 2007 in Pacoima, California. Nothing suggested tragedy was about to strike, but for 21-year-old Brandon Julius Funches and his 23-year-old girlfriend Michelle Wright, a drive that should have been forgettable turned into a story people in the neighborhood would talk about for years. The two had been together for only 3 months, though they had known each other far longer. That afternoon, they were cruising through South Los Angeles, searching for a car part, their voices raised in an argument that neighbors later said could be heard from the street. Tension filled the car. The Dodge Magnum carried them toward a crossing near San Fernando Road and Branford Street, a stretch of track that would soon become the backdrop to something almost too violent to believe. The crossing gate was already down when they arrived. Lights flashed, bells rang, and up ahead, a Metrolink train was tearing toward the intersection at nearly 80 miles per hour. Instead of waiting, Brandon swerved past 2 cars and drove straight onto the tracks. Then, to the horror of onlookers, he stopped. He parked the car squarely across the rails, positioning the passenger side, where Michelle sat, directly in the path of the oncoming train. Witnesses froze. Some shouted. A few swore they saw Brandon and Michelle still screaming at each other, their argument boiling over in the seconds before disaster. And then the train was there. 450 tons of steel smashed into the Dodge Magnum with a force that sounded like thunder splitting the air. The car crumpled instantly, shredded into flying shards of metal. Debris scattered across the crossing, pieces of the car hurtling more than a block away. A nearby truck was disabled when fragments punched straight through its engine. Some said Brandon leapt out of the car just before the impact. Others believed the train's violent strike flung him from the wreckage. Either way, he didn't survive. The debris crushed him, his body broken before rescuers could even reach him. Michelle, however, was still trapped. Her side of the car had taken the full brunt of the collision, but somehow she clung to life. First responders fought desperately with heavy tools, finally pulling her from the twisted wreck. Bloodied and dazed, she was rushed to Providence Holy Cross Medical Center in Mission Hills. In the days that followed, her words fueled more questions than answers. From her hospital bed, she told investigators she believed Brandon had done it deliberately, that he had meant to kill them both. She described the terror of seeing the train bearing down, the hopelessness of being trapped. But later, her story shifted. She claimed Brandon had only been trying to beat the train, that he hadn't meant to hurt anyone. The concussion, the trauma, it left her memory fractured, her truth uncertain. Brandon's family refused to believe he intended harm. His uncle, Michael Ashford, spoke to reporters, insisting people were wrong to call it a planned act. To him, it wasn't murder, it wasn't suicide. It was a terrible decision made in the heat of the moment, a mistake that couldn't be undone, but the police didn't see it that way. To them, the evidence was clear. The positioning of the car, the witness accounts, the argument inside moments before. Everything pointed to something intentional, a decision made in anger. The train itself never derailed. None of the 125 passengers were injured, but the devastation it left behind was staggering. A mangled car, shattered lives, and unanswered questions. In the end, Brandon was the only one who lost his life. Michelle would heal from her wounds, but the weight of that day, the noise, the crash, the memory of being trapped on the tracks would haunt her forever. His family grieved in confusion, left with more questions than answers. May 30th, 2025, Little Havana, Miami. At just after 1 a.m., 41-year-old Katherine Kipnis stepped off the curb near her apartment. She had walked this street countless times before. She loved Little Havana. That night was supposed to be like any other, a short walk home after visiting friends, but a nightmare was already racing toward her. A white BMW 330, I tore down the road far too fast for the empty stretch of pavement. Behind the wheel was 32-year-old Ivana Gomez. Later tests would reveal her blood alcohol level was well over Florida's legal limit, between 0.09% and 0.112%. She should never have been driving, but she was. The BMW hit Katherine with a force so violent it defies imagination. Her head shattered the windshield. Her hair became caught in the seatbelt, and then her body was dragged more than 230 feet, 70 yards of horror. Witnesses later said she died instantly, but the brutality of what followed left a scar on the entire city. Because Katherine's final moments weren't unseen. A Miami police officer was right there. He watched the impact. He saw the BMW keep going. and in an instant, the quiet streets of Little Havana erupted into chaos. A high-speed pursuit as Gomez pushed her car past 100 miles per hour. The chase only ended when she stopped at a red light several blocks away as if nothing had happened. When officers approached, the details were chilling. The smell of alcohol, bloodshot eyes, fresh vomit in the car. She failed the sobriety test. But what shocked people most wasn't the crash. It was what she reportedly said afterward. When asked about the woman she had just struck, Gomez allegedly brushed it off. It was just a homeless person. That sentence was like a dagger to the city's heart, because Katherine wasn't homeless. She was a daughter, a friend, a neighbor, a woman whose life mattered. And even if she had been homeless, did that make her life disposable? Did that make her death meaningless? The cruelty of those words became the spark for outrage. In the days that followed, Little Havana turned into a shrine. Flowers and candles lined the spot where Katherine was killed. Strangers who had never met her scrawled her name on cardboard signs that read, "She mattered," because she did, and because the way her life was taken was too brutal, too senseless to ignore. Prosecutors charged Gomez with DUI manslaughter and vehicular homicide. Her bond was set at $251,000. They seized her phone, her blood samples, and every second of surveillance footage, piecing together the violence of that night frame by frame. And yet what the city wrestled with wasn't just the crash. It was the coldness afterward. The idea that a human life could be reduced to nothing with a single careless comment. In Florida, DUI manslaughter carries up to 15 years in prison. But many said that wasn't nearly enough. If you drink, drive, kill someone, and treat it like nothing happened, one attorney told reporters, you shouldn't get a second chance behind the wheel. Tonight, Ivana Gomez sits in custody, awaiting trial. Katherine's friends wait too. They want justice. But even if it comes, it won't undo what happened on that quiet Miami street. It won't bring her back. That's the cruelest part of all. And that's the question that lingers. Was it the alcohol that destroyed Katherine Kipnis, or was it the lack of humanity afterward? Anton Yelchin's tragic death in 2016 sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond, serving as a sobering reminder of how even everyday objects like a car can unexpectedly become deadly. Yelchin, a talented young actor beloved for his role as Pavel Chekhov in the modern Star Trek films, lost his life in what seemed at first glance to be a bizarre and tragic accident right outside his own home in Studio City, California. On the afternoon of June 19, 2016, Yelchin was pinned between his own 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee and a brick mailbox pillar after the vehicle mysteriously rolled backward down his steep driveway. It was a low-speed, silent incident that ended a promising life at just 27 years old. The heartbreaking nature of this accident was not just in the loss of such a bright star, but also in the strange circumstances that made it possible. The Jeep Grand Cherokee involved was one of the vehicles under recall due to a serious safety defect related to its gear selector design. Unlike traditional shifters, this Jeep model featured a monostable electronic gear shifter, a shift-by-wire system that always returned to a central position after changing gears, rather than staying visibly set on park, reverse, or drive. This unusual design caused confusion among drivers, who might believe the car was safely parked when in fact it was still in gear and capable of rolling away. In Yelchin's case, investigators concluded that the vehicle rolled back down the incline of his driveway after he exited, trapping him between the car and the mailbox. The official cause of death was blunt traumatic asphyxia, a condition resulting from the crushing force that prevented him from breathing. The situation was made worse by the fact that the Jeep's recall for the gear selector issue had been issued just a couple of months prior to the accident. The recall affected over 1 million Jeep Grand Cherokees and Dodge Durangos, but many owners, including Yelchin, had not yet had the chance to get the problem fixed. This tragic timing added a layer of frustration and sadness to the case. The accident brought intense scrutiny to Jeep's design choices and raised broader questions about vehicle safety standards. Many critics and safety advocates pointed to the confusing gear selector as a major factor that had already led to multiple rollaway incidents before Yelchin's death. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration had investigated and pushed for recalls, but incidents kept happening, spotlighting how critical timely communication and repairs are in preventing tragedies. Beyond the technical and legal aspects, Yelchin's death was deeply felt by fans, friends, and family. He was known not only for his charismatic performances on screen, but also for his kindness and creative spirit. Tributes poured in from colleagues across the entertainment industry who mourned the loss of a young actor who had so much more to offer. His parents later filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Fiat Chrysler, the parent company of Jeep, arguing that the company's negligence regarding the recall contributed to their son's death. The lawsuit was settled confidentially in 2018, but the case highlighted the broader implications of corporate responsibility when it comes to product safety. Yelchin's death was a wake-up call that vehicle technology, especially newer electronic systems, must be designed with clarity and safety as paramount. It also underscored the importance of swift action when safety defects are discovered. Though no legal settlement or recall can bring him back, the tragedy sparked increased awareness about the potential dangers lurking in modern car designs, pushing manufacturers and regulators to rethink how they communicate risks to consumers. Ultimately, Anton Yelchin's passing was a profound loss to the world of film and an important, if painful, lesson in automotive safety. While his roles on screen remain a lasting legacy of his talent, the circumstances of his death remind us that progress in technology must always be matched with vigilance and care. Behind the headlines and investigations is a young man whose life was cut far too short, one whose story continues to resonate as both a tribute and a cautionary tale.